Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Y.E.S series. Today we've got Denise Schwartz. She is a licensed physical therapist and owner of the Manual Touch. Today, Denise will be talking to us about running and some tips and tricks for running and if you have any running pain. And yeah, with that being said, thank you, Denise, for coming. We're excited to learn, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks for having me, Amy. I really enjoy doing these webinars, and it's nice to have a couple of runners here on or the webinar. The Y.E.S program tends to get mostly seniors, so we don't get too many runners. I think Amy said if you didn't want your faces to be in the video that'll be published, you might want to block out your camera because I'm not going to be seeing you, so I won't see any hands raised or anything. Okay. And I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. You got my screen and my mouse here?
Looks good, Denise.
Okay, cool. All right. Thanks again, Amy, for having me. As she said, I'm Denise Schwartz. I'm a physical therapist and owner of the Manual Touch Physical Therapy and Wheeling. We use a whole body approach of traditional and non-traditional therapy to get people back doing what they love to do. I became a runner in my early 40s. I'm now 62. And I started running with a goal to run a 5K at my son's elementary school the following year. And during that year of training, I realized I really loved running. I loved the feel of my legs moving underneath me. I loved being in nature here on the Des Plaines River Trail, listening to music I don't normally do. After completing that 5K, I went on, my next goal was to run around Meta Lake. It's a 6.5 mile loop in Eagle River, Wisconsin, where our family vacationed every summer. And by this time, I began studying the art and science of running, not only to help my running, but to become an expert to work with runners. I completed that 6.5 mile loop. So then the next goal would be to do a half marathon. So I walked around the house for weeks. Should I? Shouldn't I? Should I? Shouldn't I? And eventually, my then 15-year-old daughter, Jenna, said, I'll do it with you, Mom. And her and I went on to do 3 half marathons together. And not only was it an amazing sense of accomplishment, but I got uninterrupted time with my teenage daughter. And if you have teenage daughters, you would understand. We no longer run together, but we did do a trip to Italy together just recently. I went on to do 7 more half marathons and 1 marathon. The Milwaukee Marathon is a very small marathon. My marathon experience was wonderful. The weather was perfect. I didn't bonk. I didn't have any injuries. My best friends, my then husband, son, and mother came to cheer me on. And the best part was my son jumped in at various points in the race and ran the last 5 miles with me. He brought me salted watermelon and pretzels. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I'm really very fortunate. Prior to my marathon, I was an injury prone runner. I had my share of plenty of running injuries. I had plantar fasciitis, IT band syndrome, hip flexor strain, a year and a half long bout of Achilles tendinopathy. And the worst was a perineal tendinopathy, where the only activity that I could do that didn't cause pain was swim. And I didn't like to swim at the time, but I embraced it and went on. And now I like to swim. But so even though I'm a physical therapist and I'm an expert in running, I can't treat myself. So I would see my PT friend who would take a look at me, and she provided me with exercises to rehab whatever injury I had, to promote mobility, stability, strength. And we took a look at my running form and we made some tweaks there as well. Sometime in my running career, I adopted a chi running method, and then ultimately, to do the marathon, I did a run walk method. I did 11-minute run to a 3-minute walk, which for me was essentially 11-minute miles. Once I adopted the walk run method, I never got injured again. Unfortunately, within about 3 years of doing the marathon, my arthritis in both of my big toes was bad enough that I had needed surgery, and I haven't really run since then. I now am a swimmer. But there are many a time I miss the consistency of training for a race, of running for 2, 3 hours on the trail. And as runners, I'm sure you'll agree, there is absolutely no other activity that gives you the same sense of high, runner's high, and joy and accomplishment as running does. But I do get that sense mostly when I treat runners. So I really enjoy working with runners. So today we're going to talk about running mechanics, some ideas of how to tweak your running form, and then what do you do when you're injured? Can you run through it or can't? When shouldn't you run through it? So when we got on the webinar today, I think it's Dale said he's a casual runner, But you know what? If you run, you're a runner. It doesn't matter if you run long distance or short distance. Here's my daughter and I think our second half marathon. And here's a picture from a marathon, and you can see all different ages, and everybody's going at their own pace. It doesn't matter how fast you go. You could be when my son was in high school on the cross country team, and these boys are running really fast, or you just run slow like I did. You're still a runner. It doesn't matter. You're doing it. So here we're going to talk about running mechanics. I have a lot of slides with information that I'm not going to stop on while we're talking, but if you put your first and last name and your email in the chat box, I'll send you a copy of the PowerPoint, which will give you all that information that I'm just going to rattle off as we look at videos. Okay. So here is my son 10 years ago finishing the Chicago Triathlon. Super fast, right? I'll see it again. All right. So there is no way to analyze running in real time. So we have to videotape it, videotape you running, and slow it down so we can really take a look at it. So I'm going to show you a video here of the benefits of doing a running analysis. Hi there, it's Denise, physical therapist and owner of the Manual Touch Physical Therapy. What is a running analysis and why is it important for runners? We know that everyone's form is unique to that person, but if that's true, then why bother looking at form? Well, like in any sport, movement, or activity, there is an ideal or most efficient way to move. However, it is impossible to see the subtlety of running with the naked eye. So we videotape the person running either on a treadmill or on land in order to be able to look at the video in slow motion. So how do we capture this information and what are we looking for? Videotaping begins after the person has sufficiently warmed up, and each video is usually 20 to 30 seconds long, taken from 4 different angles. Here are a few key things we look for. In the posterior view, where do the feet land in relation to the center of the body? Where are the arms in relation to the body? We also look at the hips and if one hip drops more than the other hip. The second view is also posterior, but of the feet only. Here, we are looking at the angle of the heel in relation to the ground. In the lateral view, we look at what part of the foot hits first and where does the foot land in relation to the body. We'll look at how far the leg extends behind the body and how much vertical movement is happening as they are running. In the anterior view, where are the feet landing? What direction are the knees facing? And what are the arms doing? This list is far from inclusive, as there are many more subtle movements to running that we look for. We then take this information and determine why there are less than ideal form issues. Is it just form related, or is there weakness or flexibility issues causing the form to be off? Which, if not taken care of, could lead to injury sooner than later. Based on the video footage and a thorough physical therapy evaluation, appropriate exercises and form recommendations are made in order to optimize running form and decrease chance of injury. Happy running! Okay, so that gave you a pretty nice summary of why it's really good to get your running form analyzed and how we go about doing it. So let's talk about what we want to see and how you can maybe pick up on some of these things at home, okay? So here's a nice little list of some basics So, everybody's running form is unique, but there are some real basic things that everybody should do. So, you want to always think about running tall, looking straight ahead. You want your arms swing close to your body. You don't want to overstride where you're landing your foot. So, the foot should land real close to your body. Knees should be pointing straight ahead. There should be an ankle lean and cadence of 170 to 185 steps per minute. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about all these pieces. I just wanted to point out this slide for you. This is a blog post I wrote about I watched a video of a coach, a triathlon coach, talking about two different running styles. Either people fall into being a gazelle or a glider. And I think this really describes how someone really looks when they're running. So when I began running early on, my then husband would bike alongside me. He's like, "No, God, you don't look like a gazelle running. I don't know, you don't look like the other people running." And I was like, "Well, no, I'm kind of doing all the things you're supposed to do." And then when I saw this video, I was like, "Oh, I'm a glider. My son is a gazelle." So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and you'll see the difference here. So I love to use this video because my son's running really fast at the end of a race. So you can really see what a gazelle looks like running in slow motion. He's now 28 years old and married, so he looks a lot older than this. But okay. So what we're seeing here, standing tall, he's looking straight ahead. Okay. Has a high knee drive. He's got some nice hip extension behind him, and his elbows are close to his body. And if I'm lucky here, I can get some. Okay. The other thing is the distance where he's coming off of his back foot to where he lands on his front foot is a pretty big distance, is what really differentiates between a gazelle and a glider. And you'll really see that when you see me in slow motion. And we're going to see where his foot lands. Okay. Pretty much lands almost underneath his body. He did not overstride out in front. You can kind of see this gentleman here, his foot's in front of his body, and he's got a pretty hard heel strike. Heel striking is just fine. If I was able to really get a capture of it, you'd see my son heel strikes too. Actually, everybody does once they fatigue. Because he's sprinting, he's got this enormous knee flexion where he's almost hitting his butt. Most people don't have that. Like you can see, this man doesn't have that as well. And Drew's elbows are driving back. The other thing that it's hard to see in a video like this is he doesn't have much vertical. So running is a forward movement. You don't want to waste energy going up and down. So you wouldn't have kind of when I look at a slow video on a treadmill, you'll see the head kind of doing a nice gentle sine wave. Okay, so he's got wonderful forward momentum here. Okay, and he takes a really long stride from the back end to get one foot out. So you can see how the massive amount of hip extension behind him. Okay. So those are the things we're going to look from a lateral point of view. So now if you look at me as a glider, I'm looking straight ahead. I have a pretty decent knee drive. I got some hip extension. But if you look at where I take off from this foot to where I land, it's like probably a fourth of the distance of my son. But my elbows are driving back. I'm standing tall. My knees are straight ahead. I'm landing practically underneath my body. So I'm doing all the basic mechanics. I'm just a glider. So I'm never going to look like a gazelle. Gazelles tend to run sub 6 minute miles. And there's some studies that show that you're really kind of born to run that way. And I wasn't. um, So it's okay. Usually as people get older, they become gliders. It's a much easier, it's much easier on your body to be a glider. One of the things when someone comes in and I look at their video, I'm going to look to see if they're overstriding. And overstriding is where, here's a picture of me in one of my earliest races. And you can see there's my daughter. Oh God, she must have been 14 or something at that time, or 15. She's now 31. Anyway, here I am overstriding, which explains why I had some massive shin splints early on in my running career. People overstride if their cadence is slow, under 180, probably under 174 steps per minute. And so I needed to adjust that. And when you have that heel strike way out in front, you actually are braking and causing yourself to slow down. And it's a really hard hit. So we don't want to overstride. So that's something that we would work on. Here's just an example of how where you want to land. You can see he's landed heel and immediately gets over his foot, and his shoulder is over his foot here. You know what? There's one more piece that I didn't capture too much in that video, but I got a good picture of it later about the ankle lean. So you'll hear about that in a little bit. I have this wonderful ebook. So if you give me, again, put your first and last name and your email in the chat box, I can send you this ebook. I also have a running portal if you sign up for this online, where I have all my running tips and some high quality videos in one place. All right, so let's take a look at some posterior, when we're looking from the back, what we're looking for. This is, I drop down a midline. So you can see her feet are crossing midline. And the other thing we're looking for, I think it's going to show up later with a better picture. So here, if you look at her waistband, you can see how this hip drops dramatically. She had knee pain, and so this left knee pain, her left hip was weak. And so when she'd land on her foot, her glute muscles weren't working the way they were supposed to. And then that caused her right leg to land across midline. But when she landed on it, it wasn't too, this hip was working. It just was really stressed. You can see the angle there because you want to land underneath your feet. So the fix for someone who crosses midline is to run with your feet hip width apart, or picture running on either side of a traffic line. That's usually the easiest thing to change first if that's the issue that we see. The other issue that I often change early on is cadence. So we have to decide which one to do. In the anterior view, we're looking to see if the arms are coming across the body or not, and if your knees are pointing straight ahead. So those are some other pieces we're going to look at. So once you videotape, how do we know what we need to change and what we need to work on? You don't want to change too much at once. It's too difficult. So we just change one thing at a time. If I see crossing midline or the cadence too low, I usually choose one of those two things to change first. If the cadence is fine and we change the stride, the distance between the feet, that can almost take care of symptoms pretty quickly. So that's an easy one to change and fix. In my PowerPoint slide here that you'll have, here are some nice form recommendations that will remind you what you need to do. Okay. Cadence. This is really important, something that you can do on your own. So you want to count how many steps, how many times one of your feet hits the ground in 15 seconds. Okay, so let's say you choose your right foot. You start your timer. Every time your right foot hits the ground, you count that step for 15 seconds. Then you multiply that by 8, and you'll come up with how many steps you do per minute. If it's under 170, we probably want to up the cadence. If it's over 185, it's probably a little bit too much, and that's something we'd have to kind of discuss and play around with. And I have some here's instructions on how to change your cadence. You don't want to, let's say you're running at 160 steps per minute. You don't want to you try to do 180. Okay, you change it by 2 to 6 beats per minute at a time. Download a metronome on your phone, and then you can kind of get the rhythm of those steps. And so what I'll do with people, let's say they're at 165, I'll probably up them to 170 or 172, and I'll tell them to run for about a minute or 2 minutes at that cadence, and then to run at whatever pace or step rate they want, maybe for 5 minutes, and then try it again. Eventually, after 2, 3 weeks, you might be able to get a string together your whole normal run of at the new cadence. You don't want to do too much right away because you're going to get some soreness as your muscles are adapting to it. Something I'd like to say, the particularly about people crossing midline, I see that a lot with people coming walking. In fact, I would say the majority of my patients wind up crossing midline for various reasons. Maybe not quite crossing midline with running, but they'll walk almost like in a tightrope or too close together. So people with walking, I have them also work on walking with their feet hip width apart. That makes a huge difference. And sometimes people come in with hip pain or IT band, and once they just change where they're walking, where their feet are landing, the pain goes away. This was a piece that I missed early on. You want to have a good ankle lean, and that's what this is, okay? Otherwise, if people are, I think I have a picture. Oh, maybe I don't have it in here. Anyway, sometimes if people don't have a good ankle lean and they're sitting way back, they're reaching out too far in front and they're not accessing their glutes too well. Here is an exercise to work on that ankle lean. And you can get this in my running portal or on my website. This is some running arm exercises to work on getting a nice.
Closer to your ribs.
Nope. I should have turned the volume off. Sorry. The rib drive. Okay. And then we want to do it in standing, right? And this is to work on, if you can watch closely, his upper body is rotating one way as his upper body goes the other way. That's called a counter rotation. And that's why his knee is driving this way. Okay. So those are some basics about running mechanics, some things that you can do on your own. If you videotape yourself or if you come in here, we'll really get some really nuanced. Some specific issues for specific group of runners. So for women runners in particular, women in general tend to have hip and core weakness. And then younger women, as they're developing, develop a lot of postural weakness. So their core isn't working very well. And then, of course, women go through menopause, which changes everything. So it's really important to keep up with hip strength and core strength and pelvic floor strength for women. Women who have given birth, or even men who gain a lot of weight and then lose weight, or even really heavy duty weightlifters, you might get a splitting of your transverse abdominis muscle, which is the muscle that goes around your whole core, and it causing a diastasis where you have a split of that muscle. And after you give birth or after you lose a lot of weight, it doesn't come back together like it's supposed to. And that diastasis, I can see that years later. So I had a woman, Gail, came to see me with plantar fasciitis, and she had fractured her foot twice, and she had 4 kids. And so by the time I saw her, I don't know, her youngest child might have been 5 out of the 4 kids. And she was a casual runner, ran a few times a week. She found that she would have to want to urinate within running of a mile every time she went out. And she had all these foot issues. And what I found was she still had a diastasis from childbirth. So I gave her some exercises to retrain her core to work properly, to get that transverse abdominis to activate. And I haven't seen her since. and she no longer had that urge to urinate within running a mile. So she can go out and run 3 miles without a problem. These are some links to some blog posts for women runners and women in general to take care of themselves. Another issue, runners, as they get older, things change. It just happens. As we all get older, men and women, we lose muscle mass and bone. The joint mobility becomes stiffer and more rigid. And because of that, we develop balance challenges. Our speed will decrease as the elasticity of our tendons and our tissue are just not the same. So you will slow down, and those reflexes become less less as well. So our running will change, and every all of our other activities as well. But it doesn't necessarily stop you. Here's my friend Carney. He's 73 years old and he's still doing triathlons and doing pretty well. He ran a marathon in his mid 60s. So it doesn't have to stop just because you get older, but your expectations have to change. And the amount of cross training and cross exercising that you need to do need to increase. You have to have balance exercises. You have to have strengthening exercises to get all those pieces working together. Now, probably why you're here is to learn what do you do when you get injured and why do runners get injured? Runners get injured a lot because it's a repetitive motion with very little deviation. And so their injuries typically are because of the too much syndrome or overuse, too much intensity, too much speed, moving through a training plan too soon. And sometimes you follow a plan and you're doing really well and you're working with a coach and you're working within your limitations, and then all of a sudden you're injured. Sometimes you don't know when you've reached your too much syndrome. Usually that's not only the overuse piece, sometimes it's biomechanics. That was me. I was an injury prone runner because I had very rigid feet and ankles, which caused a lot of stress into my body, and my soft tissue didn't adapt well enough or quick enough. You could have weaknesses or muscle imbalances, soft tissue restrictions. Maybe you've had some surgery and you've got a lot of scar tissue that limits your mobility where you need it. Your running form could be an issue, which we did a whole talk about. Could be your shoes. Are you in the right shoes for you? Doesn't matter what brand it is. We just have to find the right shoe for you and your foot type. Are you someone who underpronates, which I am? So I need a neutral shoe. Are you someone who does pronate? So you need a stability shoe. Pronation is where someone's foot falls in or they're flat footed. I have high arches, and that's usually a neutral shoe. Have you been using your shoes for too long? Are you keeping track of your mileage? I needed to change my shoes every 300 to 400 miles. I would have breakdown, in certain spots in the shoes, which it would then throw off my mechanics. So you're injured and you want to know, can I continue running through my injury? Because sometimes you can, but when you can't is if you're in constant pain. So you run, it hurts while you're running, it hurts after you're running, it hurts while you're sleeping. The next day, the pain is still just as bad. You need to stop running. But if you run and your pain is intermittent while you're running, and then afterwards it dissipates pretty quickly, and you're fine the rest of the day and the next day, you can run through it. If the pain while you're running or afterwards is less than a 5 out of 10, you might be able to run through it as well, long as it's gone by the next day. And if that's the case, we might make some tweaking in your training plan or how you're running. We might shift you to a run walk program, because what might be happening is your form might be breaking down every 3 to 5 minutes, let's say, or your body fatigues. And so your form breaks down. And that's why you get injured. So if we do a run walk program, you can reset your running form. And that's what worked for me. I had a patient, Gwen. She was a by the time I saw her, she was a professional working in her late 20s, but she was a collegiate cross country runner. So she was a good runner and she knew how to run. So we didn't really need to do much with her form, but she had had a hamstring strain for many months by the time I saw her, which happened. She had fallen on a run maybe 8 months previous, and this hamstring strain just kind of kept tweaking her. She could still run because it only hurt intermittently and it didn't bother her at other times of the day. So when she came in to see me, she had had an issue with her sacroiliac joint when she fell. So we got that fixed up. That's in her low back and her pelvis. And I told her, and her goal was to qualify for Boston. And she had a race, I think maybe 3 months or 2 months later, maybe 2 months later. So I told her, I said, you may not do any speed work. All her speed work she did on a spin bike. She could still run, but she had to run at an easy pace and do all her other strength training. I gave her some mobility exercises and balance exercises and strengthening. And she did all her speed work on her spin bike. Because she was an experienced runner who had done many marathons, she didn't need to she knew she could run fast. She knew she could finish a marathon. So we didn't have to have the mental hurdle of running fast. She could do her speed work on the spin bike and it would translate over into her running. And sure enough, she did great at her marathon and she qualified for Boston. So those are little tweaks you can do. Someone who needed to stop running, like I had to do when I had peroneal tendinopathy. I had to stop running altogether and I had to swim and aqua jog. When she was able to run through her injury, we just had to run easy and do her speed work differently. Okay, so when you can't run, you are resting your injury. So sometimes runners or anyone who has an injury, they think, okay, I'll just stop doing that activity. And once the pain goes away, I can start up again. A lot of people wind up in that cycle because when you rest, it doesn't change why you got injured. Yes, it allows your tissues to heal. So if we take away the activity that's re-injuring it, allowing those tissues to heal, but it doesn't change why you get injured. So what do you do when you can't run? You can cross train, elliptical, spin, bike, aqua jogging, physical therapy, or you just enjoy life. So what's the biggest mistake runners make in pain? They ignore it. So you're resting it, right? Maybe you stop running for a couple of weeks and it goes away, so then you run again, but then it comes back because you haven't figured out why you got that problem. And that's why you want to get into physical therapy, get a running analysis, and figure out why you're getting those problems. Okay. So, what happens when you come into physical therapy? Well, I do a PT evaluation. I take a look at your walking, your mobility, your strength. We'll poke around a little bit, figure out what's going on. I provide you with some exercises, both to strengthen, to build balance, improve your mobility, make sure all your joints are moving as much as they need to accomplish the activities you want to do. And then most importantly, neuromuscular reeducation exercises to get your body working together, particularly your feet working with your core. So every time your feet hit the ground, are they activating your core and your glutes the way they're supposed to so you can move optimally? And then most important, we provide you with a lot of education. So even not just when you're doing your activity that you love, but how to function all day long and sleeping. Because if you're not in good posture or functionally or moving the way you're supposed to all day long, it doesn't matter how much you change and how well you do your exercises, you're going to still have a problem because and everything is connected. I'll also talk about feet and your shoes. You know, we want to make sure you're in the right shoes. So oftentimes I'll send you to a shoe store where they will evaluate you what kind of shoes you need. I love this story. This is Raj. He is actually holding a sign. He was pacing somebody, I think, in a 3-hour marathon time. But when he came to me, he had a sports hernia, which is a tear in one of the abdominal muscles. And he had pretty much just started running and doing triathlons. And he think he was a 4-hour marathoner when I saw him. And since then, we got him through his rehab. He went on to be an amazing runner. He has now run sub 3-hour marathons. He completed running the Grand Canyon from rim to rim to rim. That's where you go from the top all the way down to the other top and then back. He did Ironman triathlon, so he was really quite the athlete, and you can see he gets great joy of running. So those are all the things. Those are nice slides about everything that we want to do for runners, all the education you need. Here is another fabulous tool that we use here at the Manual Touch Physical Therapy. And what really differentiates us is really that whole body approach of looking at how everything is working together. But we also have this wonderful tool called an OOV. This was a device created by an Australian osteopath and biomedical engineer. It works your body three-dimensionally and it activates your core subconsciously. You can lay on your back. You can have it between your back and the wall. You can stand on it. You can lay on your stomach or your side. Here, I got an older gentleman doing some step balance exercises with it. And here's my son doing a more single leg advance exercise. I had my daughter's friend down in Florida. I think he's an MMA athlete. He's really uh, quite an athlete. He had some weakness. He has some hip issues. Anyway, he got onto the OOV on one leg, holding a plate. I don't know. I think those are 50 pounds, and did a pistol squat. So you can make it as advanced as you need, or you can do it. You know, if you're older, we can use it there as well. Another device by this Australian osteopath is a balance sit where you sit on it. And this again activates your core and your pelvic floor and really gets some good differentiation between your pelvis, hips, and back. So remember, if you put your first and last name in the chat box with your email, I can send you a copy of this PowerPoint, a bunch of ebooks, access to the running portal. So thank you for being here. You can reach me, and thank you for coming. And if you'd love to have just a phone consult, feel free to call my office and we can set you up for that. And we can talk about what you might need or what I can recommend. So, does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I'm
go ahead.
72, and is there advice for somebody my age?
Yeah, I mean, there are mobility exercises that you always need to do to make sure your hips are moving the way they need to. All the things that we talked about, make sure your shoes are appropriate, they're not worn out. You need to keep up with the mobility and balance exercises. You may need to shift to a run walk method depending on how well your body is holding up. And you may need to, let's say you were somebody who ran 5 days a week, you might need to shift to running 3 days a week and really doing some cross training. So as we age, we may need to shift how our training looks, may have been different from when we were younger.
I can follow up on Dale's. I'm 74. So, I mean, I ran track in college. I've been a big runner. I haven't been running a lot right now. I had gone and they told me I have arthritis in my knees. And I've shifted. I swim, I bike, But once they told me that, it was almost like I was a little afraid to run.
Um,
It's like if I'm running for health and wellness and I have arthritis, is it counterproductive? And then I saw something on the internet and it's like, running's not necessarily bad if you have knee arthritis. So I'm kind of like right there, so, and of course, like when you talk about your speed changes, I mean,
mhm.
yeah, right.
I
I
know. So,
mean, it's like I'm like a whole different runner now, but the pleasure is still the same. My
well,
big
that's
thing is,
wonderful.
yeah, my big thing is like, is it hurting me or is there a nice balance to still be able to run?
Mhm. So, those are all good questions. So first I'm going to address the aging piece. We all age
Mm-hmm.
and our bodies just change. And so it's about accepting where we are and how
Yep.
do we work with that to still do what we love to do. As far as knee arthritis or any kind of arthritis, it's really based on your pain tolerance that I talked about before. If you find your knees hurt while you're running and that pain persists and is achy through the night and bad the next day, we need to change how we're doing the running. And if we can't come up with a method to that you won't have that pain, then we might need to talk about stopping running. But yeah, studies show, for joint health, like osteoporosis, you need that pounding, you need that. So it's good. And there is no evidence that runners have more total knee operations than sedentary people. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So it
Mhm.
kind of depends on how significant your arthritis is and how much it interferes with your everyday life. So
Mhm.
you could come up with a plan, maybe you do twice a week, or maybe you do a run walk method, or, there's lots of different ways that we can skin the cat, if you will, and see
Mhm.
how you do. It's really how pain and how much it interferes if the pain disrupts your life.
Okay.
So,
Thank you for
is it
that.
going to make it worse while you're running? It's hard to say. Arthritis, we wear away. You were an athlete, and it's a double-edged sword. When we work out a lot and we're very athletic, things wear away sometimes sooner than other people, but then if you're sedentary, it wears away. So you got to find that balance between.
Mhm.
Does that answer it? I hope.
Yes, it does,
And I don't want you to be fearful. I think it's really about I had a patient, she's not a runner, but she has pretty significant knee arthritis. However, it doesn't really hurt her and she can still do everything she wants to do. And so she went and saw the surgeon just a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "Well, yeah, it's bone on bone, but if it's not hurting you and you still have good knee mobility, then you wait." The
Mhm.
problem is with waiting is if you start losing, so particularly with knees, if you can't flex your knee as much as you can need to, or if you can't straighten it as much as you can, once you start losing that, then you got to really start looking at doing something else.
Mhm.
If you're starting to atrophy because the muscle weakness is a problem, so you have to kind of know when you want to go. People who have knee arthritis can live with it a really, really long time.
Mhm.
If you have
Thank you
hip
for that.
arthritis and you need a hip, you need to get a hip. My big
Mhm.
toe was a big problem. I needed to do something. So,
I also saw on your website that you have correct toes
yeah, oh, they're wonderful.
because that's the other thing. I have hammer toes and I'm not going to get surgery. So when I looked on your website, it was like, okay, I've got to get back to those correct toes. And I actually just ordered ones that are they call them sport, so that you really are you should be able to wear them while you're walking or
Oh,
running.
so it's a different brand?
Nope, they're part of the correct toes.
Oh,
So anyway, but that was it.
yeah, the correct toes you can wear walking or running if they fit in your shoes, if the toe box is wide enough.
Yeah, okay.
So there's a way to relace your shoes. I think if you look on my website, there's an article about shoelacing, and you can see
Okay.
different ways to do that. It's not easy to I have dinky little feet. And so, so the correct toes fit in the shoes with them. And I had a gentleman here just now. He's not a runner, he's an older gentleman. But he was able to get a wide enough shoe where the correct toes worked with his in there. So, and sometimes you can play around with trimming the correct toes. You know, you cut off like the little toe part because you don't need the little toe doesn't need to be spread as much as all the other toes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. But I'm glad you got them. The correct toes, when you get them, you want to wear them and do some balance exercises while you're wearing them without shoes.
Okay,
Because what it does is the correct toes get your foot to sit on the ground the way it's supposed to, get your big toe on the ground and your whole foot on the ground the way it's supposed to, and it helps with your balance and gets your foot to work the way it needs to. When I first used them 12, 13, 14 years ago, my arches actually softened enough that I had to get new orthotics. So it was a
Oh.
dramatic change for me.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you for coming,
Thank you.
and
Yes, this was great.
yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you,
Well,
Denise.
thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank
You are
you.
quite
Thank you.
welcome.
This
Yeah.
was great. I put my email in the chat box.
Okay, great. Appreciate it.
Thank
Did
you.
want to put your email in there?
Yes,
like
I did. Yes.
You did?
Well, you know what, Dale?
Oh, no, I didn't. Pardon me. Okay, hang on.
Yeah, go ahead and put it in there
While
and
you
then
guys are doing that, I'm gonna let you know Denise's next talk is in September. It's on the 18th, same time. It's on how to heal low back pain. So if you don't,
Oh,
if you
okay.
aren't interested in that, but if you know somebody that has lower back pain, please send along the information.
Yeah.
It's on our website and we have flyers in the lobby of the YMCA, but we'll
Okay.
And the
follow.
other thing, physical therapy, both of you are seniors, probably on Medicare. So with Medicare, you do need a prescription from your doctor, and I do accept Medicare.
Thank you. That's great information.
You're welcome. Well, thanks for coming. This was fun. I was
Thank
glad
you.
to see some runners. It's nice.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Denise. Everyone have a
Enjoy
wonderful
the
day.
rest of the summer. Bye.
Thank you, you too. Bye.
Bye.